Well, at the end of the day, HR is supposed to be looking out for the company. They should be aware of the policies of the company, making them fair so people are not treated unfairly or discriminated against, that state and federal policies are followed. Why should somebody build a whole core competency of HR in their company if they don't have to? And it ends up being very, very expensive. So we can give them a higher level of service, higher level of expertise for less money than they can do it inside themselves and not make the mistake.
That's Ed Peterson from HR Advisors and HRadvisors.com. We're talking today about why your company could benefit from HR consultants. Ed, let's start by telling us a little bit about your company.
We're a company that's been around now for 22 years. We're a classic consulting firm model, and our niche as a boutique consulting firm is specifically the area of human resources. And that's a pretty vast area to tackle just in itself. Basically, we do a little bit of everything in HR across the board. If you've looked at our website, you know that it talks about everything from outsourcing of HR to a main area. One of our main focus areas is that of compliance with federal and state regulations. And we're helping to guide our clients to stay not only current with those regulations, but they're abiding by them. And so they don't get into trouble. That's the bottom line.
You work with companies large and small, both, right?
We do. Yeah, it's a little different nature. Well, for instance, there's a product line on our website. It's called HR on Demand. And that product is basically focused at smaller companies, anywhere from, let's say, 5 employees to 50 is the sweet spot. We have some that are a little larger than that are on that program, but it's basically an off-site program to where we become like the call down the hallway to the HR department, and we're able to take any call. Just any hiring manager or owner might call down to the HR department and say, hey, I've got a problem. Here's what's happening with this employee. There's a challenge around them. Or, hey, we just got a letter from the labor board, and how do we react to this? What do we do next? So that's where we kind of take over, as giving guidance. We're taking that phone call. We have, for that particular product line, HR on Demand, we actually have 7 of us that support that line. So it's like having an HR department with everyone with different specialties, which you would have typically in a larger company. Small companies can't afford that many people. In fact, they usually can't even afford one person of the level of professional that you need to keep your company safe.
Well, and I think about probably a perfect example of this is my father-in-law owns a small company, I think with like maybe 8 or 9 full-time employees, and I think this is kind of the perfect application for it because they don't have an HR department. It's him. I mean, he runs everything. So what do you have to offer for that company? That they can just call you and just say, like you're saying, I guess you already answered that question. But I mean,
the bottom line is they can call us. It's unlimited calls or emails coming into us. We're helping them with guidance having to do with all kinds of employee challenges, and just again with all the federal and state laws. And for the record, we have about 130 companies just on that one product line that we do that. It's now most in California, but we actually have on that product line companies that are in 5 other states. So it's simply that the owner, the manager would be calling into us asking for guidance. The claim to fame that I would say, well, we're so much more competitive and higher level of service than anything else that's out there, is that we actually help the manager, the employer, with the write-up of, we actually do the writing for them. The wordsmithing. There's if they need to do a corrective action with an employee, something they need to guide that employee, get them back on track so they're successful, we're actually doing the write-up and sending it over to the employer so that they can then sit down with that employee, help get them on track.
With the writing up, that's a lot of what you do is helping establish policies and things like that within the company, correct?
Well, we're certainly guiding on that. I mean, for instance, a small company, like you mentioned, of 8 to 9 employees, typically as they come onto our program, immediately as they sign up, they're just charged a small, like a retainer each month that they have unlimited access to us. And under the retainer, we're happy to handle ongoing questions every day around any of the issues we talked about, or response to like the labor board or ED, something like that comes in, and we can help guide them on this. In regards to policies, typically a company like that might have an employee handbook, let's say, that's in place at the moment. It might be several years old. It could be something that was just put together when the company was formed, and it's never been looked at since. And so under our program, at no additional charge, we automatically will take that handbook and actually do a review of it and give feedback to the employer. And then if just a couple things missing, we're happy to hand that over to them. Or typically happens is there's a lot of things that need addressing, and at that point we can then kind of guide them through a process of not only updating the handbook, but also addressing specific policies they may not have even thought about, or if they want to look at different types of benefits and things like that, which require policies that are consistent and compliant with state laws, we can help them do the wordsmithing on those policies.
Another big area it looks like that you guys cover is recruitment. And I think there's a lot of companies that probably have the same complaint that say, I can't hire good people. I just can't find them. How do you guys help with that?
We actually can operate just like we do on the HR side as an extension of the company. So that's one of the core competencies of HR Advisors. It's one of our claims to fame, if you want to say. We have specialized for many, many years in helping with the growth of companies. For a number of years, we actually had a lot of startups in Silicon Valley, Northern California, that as the venture capitalists would put, say, $5, $10, $15 million of money into a brand new startup, we would be introduced to that startup through the VC people. And our whole thing was to be able to help that company grow quickly and identify key talent. So we're really good at it. We have that HR bent to us, but we have that technical ability with part of our company that is able to source. We're able to help guide the employer or the hiring manager even with their job spec and the requirements that they're looking for. We're able to really zero in on any specific industry to find the right person for the job.
And a lot of that, I'm sure, is figuring out how to write the right job description to attract the right people. How do you guys do that?
That's part of it. It's kind of a marketing side, if you want to say. It's certainly, we have a couple of people in our on our recruiting side that's one of their specialties, is being able to get creative with job postings. I think one of the important things is that as we're working with a client around the recruiting area, we're really kicking the tires around really getting into why is it that somebody would want to come to your company? What are all the really good, strong points that are going to attract that high level of employee to want to come here? And we're able to ferret that out, put it in, get it into the networks that we reach out to, the sourcing, and so our recruiters are really good. Recruiting is a little bit of sales anyway. You're helping to attract that right person. It's not just a simple phone call of, hey, you want a job.
Yeah, they have to be the ones that, the candidate themselves, when you're in the interview, you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. You want to make sure that's a good fit.
It's actually a sales in both directions. We find ourselves in the middle. It's like we become that strong glue or conduit as a good recruiter in any company should be, to where you're able to be excited about the opportunity for the company, that you can express that to the potential candidate. And then likewise, as you're dealing with the 2 or 3 top candidates, that you're able to work closely with the hiring manager, sometimes to get past the classic challenge of just because a resume has the right words on it and looks good, let's hire this person. That's why so many companies don't always get the right person in there. Resumes are certainly important. Experience is certainly important, but sometimes the best resume doesn't always mean it's the best culture fit to that company, and that it's going to work down the line. So we're always looking for a lot of factors, behavioral, everything that's going to match across the board, because we want that to be a successful hire for that company so the team is going to grow successfully.
Do you have any advice for people trying to navigate that process, potential employees trying to get into a company?
You mean for the job seekers?
Right.
Some of the things that I come across at times are where job seekers do themselves a disservice with not paying attention to their resume, the grammar, sometimes little quality things like misspellings on cover letters, because sometimes that'll knock them out of the process before they even get a chance. And it also, if someone is sloppy like that, that's something that many hiring managers, they don't even want to go to the point of a face-to-face interview because they already consider the person sloppy.
Do you consider, when you guys are, say, contracted by a company to handle some of this hiring process, are you guys actually the ones, you're not the ones that actually make the hire, you can help make recommendations of a potential employee?
That's correct. We would not be legally making the hire, but what we would be doing, just like in any HR department, even in the largest name companies you can think of GE to Disney to whatever, they have HR departments, they have recruiters in larger companies like that they basically are working very closely with the hiring manager, and a good recruiter consultant is going to be working closely enough with the hiring manager to be able to help guide them as to what they really need to be paying attention to. Believe it or not, sometimes just the way somebody dresses on a particular day, will be a turnoff to a hiring manager, and it's like they're not paying attention to other things that they should be. Of course, a good recruiter would be letting the candidate know what the culture and dress standards are before they even come in the door. So they're really helping to dress the candidate up, so to speak, of the ones that really should be paid attention to.
Now, part of that hiring process, too, is background investigations. How important is that into a lot of companies' hiring process these days?
We actually feel it should be a part of every company's hiring process. The job of the recruiter is certainly to have done a good job up front of identifying the top candidates, people that are a match to the spec and that interview well. I always feel good at the end of the day if any hiring manager we're working with, they have 2 or 3 top candidates and they honestly say, I have a hard time picking. They're also good.
That's a good problem to have.
It is, absolutely. But the next step of the process, which many companies totally just kind of run ahead and they get a little bit lazy because they don't have these processes in place, especially with small to medium-sized companies. They just go ahead and get the offer letter out, quick, slam the person in to the company and get them working. And then they don't think anything more about it. And then sometimes problems do come up later. We see it many times. If they would finish the process, it's like it's not over till it's over, so to speak. During the actual final stages of the hiring process, it means they should be doing actually a couple different things. One is a background check that involves things like criminal history, things that might come up that would be of concern. Example, if you're hiring a controller, financial person for your company, and it comes up in their background check that they were arrested and incarcerated for theft, that might be relevant. And you probably don't want to go any more forward with that. And it's on the record. So those are very relevant things. Likewise, other than the background check, is, I think just as importantly, are dotting the I's, crossing the T's with what are called professional references. And that means that you're asking the candidate for, you seem to be really good, you said you've done really well in these jobs before, we think you have the right skills. Can you please provide us with 2 or 3 hiring managers, people you've worked for, that can speak to the quality of your work and your work style and all of that? And normally a really good candidate is going to have 2, 3, or more really good references that as you contact those people, they're going to be excited about talking about that candidate. If they're not, and if you can't even reach people or they can't even provide professional references, that says something about the candidate too.
Yeah, you don't want to have somebody's mom as a reference, right?
And sometimes we've gotten that. Actually, we kind of go back to the candidate and say, no, let's try that again. thank you for the name of your next door neighbor and your minister, but we really need somebody that you work for, a manager.
What is this other one? I see behavior analysis. Tell me a little bit about that.
In many positions, that does become part of the process. It can be, especially for very complex jobs, a lot of people interaction and so forth. So behavioral testing, there's one tool that we basically use it as a tool. It's from it's been out there for many, many years. It's called DISC, D-I-S-C. There are actually many behavioral tests that are out there. Some companies will actually have a tool that they've been using for a number of years, and they'll ask us to put that in as part of the process, and we're happy to do that. If a company has nothing and they're looking to at least get something into place, a DISC analysis is kind of a nice thing to start with. Only takes like maybe 15 or 20 minutes for the candidate to do it online with a link from an email, and it basically provides feedback to the candidate and to the hiring manager in regards to everything from work style, personality. Obviously, a salesperson is going to need a much different personality than a computer programmer. Marketing person to a CFO. They're just totally different realms of people that classically they're styles that will work better.
You guys have been around, it sounds like, quite a while and have worked with companies all over.
We have. If you look at our marketing materials, you go to our website, I mean, we just have a few things that are in there. We're kind of like the little engine that could, you might say, a best-kept secret. Sometimes they're in corporate America here, but yeah, we've dealt with a lot of very high-level companies. I mean, our claim to fame certainly is a lot of startups, VC-funded, technical positions, companies that are growing, software developers, internet specialists, that type of thing. But we have things across the board. We actually did a project for a couple of years building a division of Disney. One of the projects I had the privilege of working on for about 3 years in the late 90s, coming into 2000, was a company called VeriSign that they were funded by Netscape, Visa, and Microsoft. It was all the corporate money in the background. And they're the company that actually eventually bought Network Solutions that owns all the domain names on the internet out there. And almost 3 years, I guess it was, consultants that were embedded, working right along with all the managers at VeriSign. And we built them from 75 people before they were ever public to 550. And it was a very exciting run.
I can imagine a company like yours is very valuable to those tech startups because you have people that are programmers that are eclectic types and have no idea how to do this kind of stuff. So I imagine that's where you really have your value.
It is, yeah. And any hiring manager is, you just learn to deal with different types of personalities and how you need to help people. Some people are actually even though they need to hire some key people for their team, it's not something that they've done enough of. They just got thrown into corporate America. They were really good at what they were doing, and they said, here, you be the VP of sales. Now hire your sales team. Or you were the best programmer, so we're now making you the manager of the software program department. Now hire more engineers. And that person has literally never hired anybody in their life. So they, without help and guidance, they do a lot of bouncing off the walls, sometimes some not so great hires. And so we try and, help provide that expertise to help them make some good decisions. Again, we're not the one that hires, but we're the ones that are basically consulting and providing guidance to a manager to help them make, their best decision they can.
Now, not only can you guys be an HR department, be a consultant to a small company, but you can help advise existing HR departments for even larger companies, right?
One of the other parts of our business were with larger companies and 100, 200, 300 employees. We actually have a number of projects right now where we're able to place one of our HR consultants, very seasoned, anywhere from 10 to 20 plus years of experience, with a company that, let's say, maybe an HR professional left, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. We're actually able to embed a consultant on site with a company, say 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe they don't really need a 5-day-a-week full-time person if there are 100 employees, but they certainly need the expertise of a seasoned professional, and many times we can get a lot more work done in 2 to 3 days, be a lot more effective than sometimes just because they had an HR manager who was in there with 5 or 6 years of experience. We can bring a lot more to the table, not to mention that we have all the rest of the HR advisors team in the background, so if we have somebody embedded on site with a client, they're not there by themselves. They've got the rest of our company, of our team of HR specialists to bounce any kind of challenge or problem off of, and then they're able to help guide the client on these on-site projects.
Well, that's really cool. There's a lot of value in having a resource like that, and I don't think there may not be a lot of companies that realize that consultants like you exist, so that's really fascinating to learn.
Well, the other thing is, I think I mentioned earlier, but at the end of the day, the most important job of the whole HR function is really the shielding and protection of the company. They certainly provide a service on no matter what company you can name of any brand name company. That many times will have a whole slew of HR people in there, a whole department, or sometimes it's just one person for a 75 to 100 person company. But that person's job, even though they're kind of a conduit or connection to the employees. The employees should have a place where they feel comfortable to come and talk before any problem grows past the point where it can be really handled, easily and professionally. But the point is, still at the end of the day, HR is supposed to be looking out for the company. They should be aware of the policies of the company, making them fair so people are not treated unfairly or discriminated against, that state and federal policies are followed correctly. Even the basics that we come across all the time that still companies are constantly challenged with, have been around for many, many years, are just some of the basics of wage and hour. They get things confused, and that's what an HR professional should be helping to do, is guide so that they don't go through 3, 4, 6 years of doing something wrong, and then when somebody gets terminated or leaves the company, usually the employee will either Google information on wages or whatever. They'll figure it out before the company will, and suddenly they get that letter in from the labor board or the EDD that says, oh gosh, you owe back wages on this person because they never got their meal period, or they didn't get their rest breaks, or whatever the issue happens to be. These are things that we come across all the time.
Happy employees make for a happy company, right?
There you go. And something, the old saying that we keep coming across all the time when it's like, hey, we're an HR consulting firm. Would you like to, we're happy to do business with you. And sometimes you have a naive business owner will say, I don't think we're just one big happy family. And of course, the reality is you're a big happy family until you're not a happy family. And even the best of families can go dysfunctional once in a while, and that's just the reality of human nature. So we try and keep them on a solid keel. If a company is at least following and compliant with all the various federal and state guidelines and rules, then when a challenge comes up from an employee, at least they can focus on the problem as to what the employee is or is not doing, or if they're misbehaving or whatever. It doesn't get sidetracked by some quick conversation of the employee holding up their hand and saying, oh, gee, over the last 6 months, I didn't get my lunch breaks. And that just kind of takes it in a wrong direction, if you know what I mean.
Now, you've been doing this a long time. You've worked with a lot of different businesses. You probably see some patterns. What are the most common mistakes, the most common occurrences that you see happening at different companies?
Employee classification. It's the number one thing out there, especially in these last couple of years. The government's in fundraising mode. There are just lots and lots of rules and regulations, and the classic thing that employers get wrong is what is called exempt versus non-exempt. Do you know the difference?
You're talking salaried versus hourly?
I am exactly talking about that. The hourly employee is really, it's the safest way of going that they're eligible for overtime. That's the big thing, that they're non-exempt. They're eligible for time and a half for overtime. In California, every state is a little bit different. In California here, it is over 8 hours in a day or over 40 in a week, and then they're eligible for overtime. And unfortunately, there are a lot of employers that what they try to do is say, well, you know something, we're just going to make the person exempt. We're just going to pay them a salary, and that way we don't have to worry about lunch breaks, and we don't have to worry about this and that and everything else. And they'll classify someone wrong. And the problem is that it's not just because the employer said, oh, I just want to not track that stuff. In order to be exempt, you actually have to fall into certain categories by state and federal law to be an exempt employee, to be exempt from overtime. You really need to, it's typically someone that's in management. They're managing multiple employees. They're responsible for, operations, for enforcing company policy and that type of thing. It's the nature of their job. They're more like management level, and that's why they're exempt. And anytime an employer gets it a little bit wrong, they could be liable for up to from several months to several years that we've seen it of back overtime and missed lunches and all kinds of things like that. That's where it could literally, doing it wrong can put a company out of business.
And I think, like I was saying, the biggest value that you guys can provide is allowing a CEO, a company president, to not have to so much worry about these things. That's a lot of where your value comes in, is that they get to spend time worrying about other things, keeping their employees happy, than worrying about the little regulations that you guys sweat, right?
In some cases, big regulations. But the bottom line is, for employers, they should be focusing on their business, whatever their expertise is. And a small business, typically, it's not the smartest thing. It's been proved years ago that outsourcing of things, various activities that are not your core business, is a smarter way to go, because now you've got the experts. Anybody that this day and age tries to have their own hired inside IT department is going to be spending a heck of a lot more money and probably not getting the level of technical services that they'd be getting if they just went to an IT specialty firm that can give them just the amount that they need and every level of service. We're the same way with HR. Why should somebody build a whole core competency of HR in their company if they don't have to? And it ends up being very, very expensive. So we can give them a higher level of service, higher level of expertise for less money than they can do it inside themselves and not make the mistakes.
Ed, I got to thank you for an absolutely fascinating discussion, and thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.